ليس مستغربا.
اللي عم بصير 7 اياد بشكل اخر.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Future TV. I'm Lebanese and these are today's top stories. Education Minister Ilyas Boussab says no more strikes will take place before the end of the school year, but warns a major crisis is looming over holding official exams for high school and secondary school students. A Hezbollah delegation and Maronite Patriarch Jaha exchanged views on a controversial trip by the Cardinal to occupy Jerusalem. And President Sleiman reiterates calls to elect a new head of state before the end of his term on the 25th of this month. Education Minister Ilyas Boussab has warned that a major crisis is looming over holding official exams for high school and secondary school students, given the ongoing dispute over the approval of the new wage scale. Following a meeting with a delegation from the Syndicate Coordination Committee, Boussab said no more strikes will take place before the end of the school year. He added, however, that the possibility of extending the year at some schools was being studied. He revealed that the fate of official exams lies in the hands of Parliament and its stand on the wage scale. The approval of the scale draft law has been delayed given fears of the impact it may have on Lebanon's economy. Parliament is set to convene on May the 27th to continue discussions on the matter. A Hezbollah delegation and Maronite Patriarch Jaha have exchanged views on a controversial trip by the Cardinal to occupy Jerusalem. Rai said he will join Pope Francis during a tour of the Holy Land from May the 24th till the 26th, a visit that would make him the first Maronite Patriarch to travel to Israel since it was founded in 1948. Both parties also discussed the presidential elections, and Hezbollah MPs stressed they will not attend a voting session unless politicians agree on a consensus candidate beforehand. President Sleiman has called on Parliament to elect a new head of state to avoid the perils of not electing a successor before the end of his term on the 25th of this month. Parliament has so far failed to elect a new president over differences between the March 8 and 14 alliances. A fifth round of polls is scheduled to be held next Thursday, 2 days before the expiry of Sleiman's 6-year tenure. Presidential hopeful Jaha has launched a European and Arab tour that will see him hold talks with French and Saudi officials. Security sources say Jaha left Lebanon late yesterday to an unnamed European country. The source withheld details for security considerations, but said Jaha will discuss the presidential elections among other issues with Western and Arab officials. Coming up next, an exclusive interview with EU Ambassador to Lebanon, Mrs. Angelina Ehorst. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We head over to our very own Yumna Naufal for a Future TV exclusive.
Thank you, Linda. On May 9th, on Europe Day, European Union Ambassador to Lebanon, Ms. Angelina Ehorst, hailed the values of peace, unity and freedom promoted by the European Union. In her speech that night, she said while drawing inspiration from the rich and diverse cultural, religious and humanist inheritances of Europe, they hold high the universal values of the rights of the human person, freedom, democracy, equality and the rule of law, stressing that unity in Europe's strength and their diversity is their wealth. Welcome, Mrs. Ehorst.
Thank you.
Now, perhaps the biggest change in the region, you said that night as well, is the power of the individual. People now request with all technological means, and they get to have a say in how they are governed and by whom. Which brings me to talk about the presidential elections. So far, after 4 meetings, politicians are still unable to agree on a consensual candidate. So by May 25th, if there is no candidate, what do you think are the consequences of a possible power vacuum?
Yes, Yumna, what I said also on Friday was the message of how Europe got together and how leaders were willing to strike a compromise. actually to take decisions and make a compromise. And I think this is what is lacking today in Lebanon, the willingness to move towards a compromise. And as far as we are concerned, it is a Lebanese affair. We have been saying that from day one, very much up to the Lebanese leadership, the deputies, the people to choose. But it is important that those who are in the race and those who support those who are in the race also look at what are the best options. For as far as we are concerned, it's important to meet the constitutional deadline. We have been saying that everywhere. And if you can't meet it with current candidates, look at what are other plans, what are other options. Because it's really serious if you don't have somebody now as a president, as a new president for Lebanon.
Do you think it could have consequences on the security or on whether people are going, you know, it's right around summer's right around the corner? Could it affect Europeans that perhaps want to come and travel to Lebanon this summer or things of the sort?
Yeah, well, you see now all these offers have been brought back again. That even the Saudi ambassador came back with a message of saying, you know, we welcome again a tourist from my country, from his country, coming back to Lebanon, and we want to do that the same for Europe. The country is picking up again on the economy, on different, and the challenges are huge. You know that. So it's a momentum. It's a positive momentum. You want to keep in a way together, and that's where we really hope that there is a compromise before the constitutional deadline.
They're showing pictures of Michel Sleiman, the current president, on our screen right now. Can you tell me what kind of relationship that Michel Sleiman have with the EU, and what do you expect from the next president? For
the European Union as a whole, for all the 28 member states, President Sleiman has been a very, very good president in always keeping the door open, not just for dialogue, but trying to keep as much as possible the country stable, together, working together, really representing it at the highest level. And all the work that was done, not just with the EU, but with the whole international community, expressing its full support for the work done by the president, by the team of the ministers, the previous government, the current government. You know, the message of Babda Declaration was a very strong one, and we supported it from day one. We believe that it's very important to hold a country together.
The Babda Declaration was basically a declaration that stated that all Lebanese parties should refrain from linking themselves to any outside interference when it comes to Lebanese affairs.
Indeed, and really that message of we are united, we stay together, and that's what President Sleiman did.
Do you think we need to see something different from the next president that we didn't see in Sleiman? Anything that could be improved, perhaps?
You know, what I hear from people is there is a real wish, and it goes back to the power of the individual. You know, a president that keeps everybody together. This is probably the key message we are getting from people. They would like to see a president keeps everybody together. Obviously, there are a lot of issues at hand today. You also have to deal with the security, economy, etc. But he is representing the country, or she, who knows, representing the country as a whole. So again, hopefully there will be a compromise among the different candidates.
Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif and EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton just ended their closed-door meeting in Vienna yesterday. And in light of the recent EU and Iran developments, with world powers trying to negotiate a nuclear program with Iran, and with Iran being the primary influence of Hezbollah in Lebanon, do you think this has an effect on Lebanon? Or can it?
For the moment, the negotiations, as you know, they're really focusing on one extremely important issue, the nuclear issue for Iran. And Lady Ashton, she is representing all the different parties from the E3+3, we call it, and they're still actually working on this today. It didn't finalize yesterday. The negotiations continue. There's a lot of work going on. Some are arguing it takes a long time, but mind you, this is very important. It takes a long time. There is a deadline for a comprehensive agreement. Hopefully by the 20th of July, to have everything worked out. And you know, I cannot express myself on how the details are, but it is important to see that there is goodwill from all the sides. And if that is the case, yes, that should have a positive effect on
Lebanon, because we've seen tensions. You know, Saudi Arabia just 2 days ago invited the Iranian foreign minister to come over to Riyadh for talks. So we do see this trying to bilateral talks taking place, or at least there's an expression of intention that they want these talks to take place. So how does this affect Lebanon specifically? Can it affect Lebanon? But in a positive way, you said.
It is good. You see, we always have said that all the parties should talk to each other and together, and we really hope also that in bilateral talks, in regional talks, in international talks, Lebanon is on the top of the agenda. You see, we hope that, and that is because, of course, I hope it because I'm representing the EU here, but I also feel very strongly that Lebanon should not be forgotten with all the challenges you have. So if tomorrow there are talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and if indeed Lebanon is also part of the agenda, which we hope, which we believe is important,
and it is,
then then obviously that should have a very good impact. You need to bring in the region the different players closer to each other to come to an agreement, because there's too much division already and too much violence. So hopefully this can bring a result. We very much welcome this.
You said that Lebanon is one of the top things on the agenda, and I'm also going to stress that it probably is because of the Syrian crisis today.
Yeah.
According to the United Nations Higher Commission for Refugees, there are over 1 million registered Syrian refugees in Lebanon today.
Absolutely.
And last October, you said that the EU pledged 70 million euros as it is making efforts to help meet the urgent needs of Lebanese and refugees through emergency humanitarian aid and the development of infrastructure and basic services. So as of today, where do we stand?
We have given much more than 70 million, much more. We are up to now of a total for the whole of Lebanon. I have ongoing operations of 500 million. Just the European Union, member states another 500 million, European Investment Bank, huge amounts. We are together at least 2 billion today on the table for Lebanon. You're right, there is additional funding because of the refugees, but first and foremost we want to make sure the money goes to the areas, to the villages, to the
are you able
where
to
the
make
needs
sure?
are highest.
Is there a way that
we can do that, and we do it. We do it through the government. We work through the government, through United Nations, through NGOs, and we really target the areas where it's most needed. But as you said, 1 million, more than 1 million even.
Over 1 million registered. It's not counting the ones that are not registered, right?
That's right. UNHCR say today there is one refugee registered every minute in Lebanon. That is huge. So the needs are increasing. We have to continue to come forward to help. But also it's amazing that Lebanon has been able to absorb this huge number. And I think we have to realize that there is a limit. There's a limit to the capacity
there is a problem
to absorb.
Because they're not able to absorb it without security
challenges. There's a limit
challenges
to the capacity. Yeah, and the security and economic. We have to acknowledge that also. So, when there are calls for Lebanon that help us out of this, we understand.
Can you tell me how the money is being allocated for, through NGOs, you said? So there are people on the ground that are helping. Is it education? Is it food? Is it shelter? Is it all the above? So how does it work usually?
It's all
500 million, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Euros.
It's all euros for the moment. And it's all of that. It is education, health, shelter, it's water, it's electricity, basic services. It's helping municipalities to collect solid waste. Today a lot of municipalities, they need that kind of service. And that was already the case before the crisis. We shouldn't forget that. So here you have a lot of efforts coming together. The point is, up to what moment can you absorb, and up to what moment can the international community continue to provide?
Well, here, this is my last question. With the Syrian crisis having no end in sight and refugees still coming in large numbers, we are the only country with the highest number of refugees per capita.
Yeah.
1 in every 4 people here is a Syrian refugee.
Yeah.
So what do you see? How do you see this unfolding in the next year? Let's just talk about the next year.
The next year, and if you remember last time I said it also, the war in Syria has to end. Now we don't have a political process anymore with the resignation of Lakhdar Brahimi, but that was always the path we said that needs to be taken. You need to find a political solution for it to be solved and for people to be able to go back to Syria, because I do believe the moment there is a possibility for people to go back, they will. Now, if this in the short term, ideally it should be. If it is in the long term, nobody knows. For the moment, we can only help to provide the services, help Lebanon to deal with this real big burden, and we do that. We have done it from day one, and we will continue to do that, and working as much as possible internationally, regionally, on trying to find a solution for the war. That's so important.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
That was the EU ambassador to Lebanon, Ms. Angelina Ehorst, talking to us about Lebanese politics and the region. Back to you, Linda.
Thank you, Yumna. And on that note, we end our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Education Minister Elias Boussab says no more strikes will take place before the end of the school year, but warns a major crisis is looming over holding official exams for high school and secondary school students. A Hezbollah delegation and Maronite Patriarch Shaddai exchanged views on a controversial trip by the Cardinal to occupy Jerusalem. And President Michel Sleiman reiterates calls to elect a new head of state before the end of his term on the 25th of this month. Those are today's headlines from us here at Future Television. We'll be back again tomorrow with more updates. See you then.
الغياب ليس مستغربا.
اللي عم بصير 7 أياد بشكل آخر.